Ah. Uh. Ah. Okay, there we go. For most of my life, I only knew my father as a number, donor 118. My mom's picked his profile out of a small stack of options at a sperm bank in San Francisco. There was a bigger sperm bank in Oakland with a lot more options, but it was too expensive for my mom's, so they found donor 118 in this more affordable place, or, as I would later call it, the discount sperm store. When I became a legal adult, I was allowed to learn donor 118's identity, but for years, I never got around to it. I just wasn't that curious. The way I saw it, I already had two parents, and one of my moms had done a great job with all the stuff that's normally assigned to dads. Playing catch, woodworking, corny jokes, anger problems. It was like she trained to be a dad. In fact, as a little kid, I'm told I called her dad. I guess based on the data the role was giving me, that's the role she was playing. It's probably not a coincidence that after she died, I started to wonder more about 118. I think between losing a parent and just the way your opportunities to meet people start to dip in early adulthood, he suddenly seemed like a connection worth exploring. But whenever I'd make a move in that direction, this weird thought would stop me. I'd think, wait, I haven't accomplished enough yet. I need to build up my resume, learn the code, get in better shape, something to prove his sperm didn't go to waste. I don't know where the sudden insecurity was coming from. Cultural osmosis, I guess. What the world tells you about fathers is that they're powerful. There's all these movies where the good guy has to kill their father or kill someone else for killing them. A bunch of religions use father interchangeably with God. So I think I wanted to impress him and protect myself from him by showing up to our first meeting in some kind of shiny suit of armor. Eventually, I hit a new career milestone and decided, okay, now I'm qualified to meet my father. I sent a vial of spit to Ancestry.com, and 2 weeks later, I had the name and photo of like 100 paternal relatives. I found a guy who, based on his age and our shared DNA percentage, I figured was my father's brother. I messaged him like, hey. Sorry. Weird question. But do you happen to know we're related, LOL? He immediately responded with, are you the child of a same-sex couple? And I was like, oh, I see you've solved this riddle before. He was like, yeah, I'll tell my brother I found another one. 2 hours later, I was emailing with 118. His name's Chris. He works in theater like me, because free will is a fucking illusion. He works in TV and film too. He was an acting coach for the show Kenan and Kel, which I watched as a kid, meaning, in a roundabout way, he actually had a small presence in my childhood. We set up a time to meet on Zoom, and because we have the same face, the first thing he says to me is, this is a self-serving compliment, but you're very handsome. A dad joke. Appropriate starting place, I guess. I learned enough about his life story to know he's cut from the same cloth as my mom's. East Coast born, West Coast bound, child of the 60s, not comfortable labeling his orientation, but definitely not straight. Loves nature, hates Ronald Reagan. We're from the same tribe, which definitely makes things easier. Between that and our common vocation, we easily chat for 2 hours. I learned that I'm the last of his donor kids to reach out. He's like, You have 5 half-siblings, and 2 of them are twins, and 1 of them is trans, and 1 of them's a personal trainer, and 1 of them has kids, which I guess makes you a half-uncle. And I'm like, cool, I'm not overwhelmed by this at all. He sends me pictures of my siblings who look, to me, like my extended multiverse. There's a picture of me as a jock and me as a mom. There's West Coast me, Mountain me, and weirdest of all, me whose photos is not available because he doesn't do social media. And trippy as all this existential mirror is, I can only imagine what it's like for Chris to know there are all these kids out in the world with your nature, but somebody else's nurture. Then, eventually those kids grow up and contact you, all wanting different things. One of my half-brothers apparently grew up feeling like he was really missing out by not having a father. He was one of the first to reach out to Chris, and he started calling Chris dad quickly. Then there's my brother who emailed Chris a couple of times and was like, cool, now I know, and then just moved on with his life. And then there's my brother who only met Chris once. Chris doesn't say much about their interaction, but he does describe it as unpleasant. So, it sounds like Chris has gotten the full spectrum of reactions from his offspring: warmth, hostility, indifference. I realize that probably makes this meeting more fraught for him than it is for me. He asked me a question that I'm pretty sure is the most important one on his mind, which is, do you feel like you had a good childhood? Like, were you born into a good home? And I'm like, oh, fuck. Oh, wow. Kind of hard to distill the complexities of, you know what? Yeah, I did. Not without its trials, but in the grand scheme of the human condition, totally. Good childhood, good home, final answer. I feel like he has follow-up questions, but he holds on to them. Ugh. We end the call sometime after that with me feeling like I just got through a fun but nervy audition. We make tentative plans to talk again in a week, but neither of us follows up. In fact, about a year passes where we don't talk. I kind of want to email Chris, but the more time goes by, the more awkward it feels to break the silence. Then Father's Day rolls around. And the thought of reaching out seems weird, but not reaching out seems like it would cement our silence for good. And I find myself unwilling to let that happen. To me, my relationship with Chris feels like a locked mystery box. If I put the work into getting it open, there could be any number of valuables in there. Or there could be nothing. Or there could be a bomb. But in any case, I'm not willing to part with the box. So I send an email that says something like, hey, Chris, I didn't mean to let this much time pass since we spoke. Every Father's Day before this one, I've written some kind of joke message on social media like, Happy Father's Day, Donor 118. But this year, I'm glad to retire that joke and just wish a happy Father's Day to my dad. This is the closest I'd come so far to calling him dad, which he technically is. But that doesn't stop me from feeling weird as fuck typing it. I guess I'm not like my brother from another mother who started calling him dad immediately. But Chris writes back quickly, and we Zoom again a couple of days later. This meeting goes just like the last one. We effortlessly chat for 2 hours, make plans to connect again soon, and then just don't follow up. I think at this point, we both like each other well enough, but there's just no blueprint for this kind of relationship, no intuitive answer to how we fit into each other's lives. It just doesn't seem like we need each other, and family connections are a lot harder to forge when they're not rooted in necessity or prescribed by tradition. And having that thought prompts me to remember all the times growing up that I heard people talk about the importance of the traditional American family. You know, the one in the Norman Rockwell paintings and the 50 sitcoms. Growing up, I used to hear people say that the traditional American family was what we were all meant to be a part of and what was holding society together. The context in which I heard this idea was usually people saying that my family and all the other feminists and LGBTQIAs out there were a threat to the traditional American family and therefore a threat to society. Well, I'm not actually supposed to say this, but the cat's basically out of the bag, so here goes. That's absolutely correct. We're a huge threat to the traditional American family and the version of society that revolved around it. Like, do you know how many people in traditional families saw what we were doing and were like, oh shit, that's an option? Bye. And I'm not gonna say we destroyed that family model, but we definitely demoted it from being everyone's default choice to just one out of many. And that means a lot of people have to decide for themselves some questions that in another time would have been answered for them. Like, who should I become close with? Who is worth the time and the work and the risk of that? What do I want from those people? What do I owe to them? Those are really hard questions, but I'm glad they're my questions to figure out. Chris and I have no references for how our relationship is supposed to go. We're basically in uncharted territory, but that means we can help chart it. We can help fill out the map for the next generation of donor fathers and their kids. And that alone seems like reason enough to keep going. We've talked several more times now. It still feels like we're moving slowly until I remind myself that for most of my life, this guy was just donor 118 from the discount sperm store. And we're kind of hacking and slashing a trail through a thicket of unknowns here. I don't know, for example, if I'll ever think of him as my dad in more than a technical sense. For now, what's working for me is that we're more like partners in an expedition. So, to anyone who may find this useful in your own travels, these are my notes. Thank you.
All right, give it up for Chuck. That was wonderful. I don't have any crass jokes on that because that was actually a really cool, sweet story. It may come as a surprise, but I'm not quite what my father expected me to be when I grew up. Thank you, maybe I do have a joke or two. No, he definitely wanted the football player, masculine, all this shit. But I really like in that story how it sucks about, that as queer people, we get to push that blueprint out of the way and kind of create our own story. I have a good friend, he and his husband just adopted their first child, a little daughter, Jolie, and I was talking to him and he was I know it's fabulous, wonderful, wonderful thing, and he was all stressed out. He's like, I have to do this, I have to do all this, and I remember us talking and being like, you don't have to do any of this shit. You're gay. You can do whatever the fuck you want. We get to make up this whole scenario, this whole story. You have two dads. We can do whatever the fuck you want to be, however you want to do it. Just do it with love and kindness. And so when I hear stories like that, it's really cool. And my dad actually has come to terms, that he has a giant cross-dressing son, and it's great. He's come to my drag shows, and he pats himself on the back and says, not a lot of fathers would accept their sons the way I do. I'm like, okay, Dad, thanks. All right, well, see ya next year. But no, he's all right, I guess. Anyway, moving right along to story number 4, titled Steve. Written by Adriana Kalinchuk, and I hope I didn't just botch that name. Kalinchuk, did I get it right? And read by Kirsten Dorier. Give it up for Kirsten. Da-da-da-da-da.